I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. So I had so much fun with it. I hope you'll beg my indulgence. We had our discussion about the previous part with my All African People's Revolutionary Party work study circle, work study circle. Their study circles working group. Okay, anyway. And so we and reading ahead just a little bit, there was so much more that I wanted to quickly relate. Again, forgive me for this selfish indulgence, back to this myth of black buying power, myth of black and propaganda, black buying power argument. Because what Nkrumah is saying here is still so relevant and so deep. Whether we agree with every single thing is, I think, irrelevant. But so far, I certainly do. But he's talking about here, just in this section here, where we wrapped up with our group this week. But I did not cover in my last discussion of this as it relates to buying power. Is he talks about the importance of Pan-Africanism, obviously, and he talks about, for instance, that African unity therefore implies that imperialism and foreign oppression should be eradicated in all their forms, that neocolonialism should be recognized and eliminated, and that the new African nation must develop within a continental framework. So he's obviously talking about building the United States of Africa, but specific to just this very microcosmic, narrow point about buying power. Imperialism and foreign oppression should be eradicated in all their forms. I think it is important to note the relationship between messaging, communication, propaganda, psychological warfare, and imperialism. And I thought again about the brilliant argument made years ago about intercommunalism from Huey Newton, where he talked about specifically that communication has made borders largely irrelevant, that the ability for an empire to project its messaging into any community, and this is in the early 70s he's writing this, reduces boundaries and borders to fictions, which, as he also points out, they largely were in the first place because they were all created to foster imperial exploitation and extraction. So in this case, the messaging that we get endlessly, incessantly, as I started with just a moment ago, it talked about with Boyce Watkins, that sort of this messaging is, to me, imperial in design. It is carried in a neo-colonial way by messengers who look and sound like us. But it is a very imperial message. Don't politically organize. Don't worry about public policy and power. Just get your money right. Credit unions, banks, businesses, get your money right. And I can't at this point disassociate that kind of message from its imperial origins. So as Nkrumah continues, socialism, another core component of his approach to what we need, Pan-Africanism, socialism, and nationalism. And as we talked about, I think last time, nationalism is the what does he call it? The corridor, the ideological corridor, ideological channel through which we recognize, similar to Newton's eventual point, that nationalism is what allows us to recognize the false creations of these nations and nationalisms, and their imperial design, and their fictitious nature, and something to be struggled against, even as we use them as the pathway into that level of struggle. But he says socialism, at the core of the concept of African unity lies socialism and the socialist definition of the new African society. Socialism and African unity are organically complementary. So as he says, socialism implies common ownership of the means of production, planned methods of production, political power in the hands of the people. Again, why is this important to a buying power argument? Because again, the issue is as Nkrumah does correctly, returns us to a focus on ownership of the means of production, a planned or organized redistribution, of that production and the political power that is required to make this all real. And that is ultimately my argument. It does not matter what we're doing. If we're saying politically organized, if someone is saying start a business, if someone else is saying put money in a credit union, develop a black-owned bank, none of that matters. None of that is effective without political organization, political power. So as he says, socialism must provide a new social synthesis in which the advanced technical society is achieved without the appalling evils and deep cleavages of capitalist industrial society. We must therefore be on guard against measures which are declared to be socialist, but which do not in fact promote economic and social development. So now he's using this as to go on to critique the older phrase of African socialism, to say there's no such thing. There's socialism and then there's not. But as my note is that while those who claim, obviously they're not claiming it's socialist, but those who claim that engaging in black business, banking, credit unioning, and all of that stuff is something that is good for the collective. So the parallel I'm drawing here is they're not saying it's socialist, but they're saying it is good for the community, that this is good for black people. This is good for us all. But as Nkrumah was saying there are people who are claiming that. They may be claiming socialism, but they're not really doing socialism. There are people in our context who are in this context who are claiming something good for the community, something good for all, but it's not. Investing in a bank, investing in businesses, starting businesses, paying speakers to tell you to start a business is not good business. It's not something that is good for the collective. It does not create wealth. It does not achieve political power. It does not redistribute wealth. It does none of the above. So that's why Nkrumah continues, only under socialism can we reliably accumulate the capital we need for our development, ensure the gains of investment are applied to the general welfare, and achieve our goal of a free and united continent. I agree with all of that. I just want to reduce all of this and to the specifics of again, this context of buying power, and say again that this is the assumption of political power that determines how wealth is accumulated, what constitutes wealth, and where it goes. That is what we need to be striving for. Now, again, if people want to put something else on that, if people want to give it a different title, if people want to, I'm not even, it doesn't even matter to me what the specific line is or isn't. If it doesn't include political power and redistribution, then it's not doing what it's claiming to be doing. So then he goes into, that is, Nkrumah goes into this very interesting discussion that on its own is obviously relevant and important, about the history of the development of the Organization of African Unity and the inserted divisiveness, the already baked in divisiveness based on the previously designed countries, that is the design of European imperialism. So that European imperialism, in other words, created all of these countries in Africa, and then that being baked into the process, even under sham or fake independence, led to the neo-colonial divisiveness that emerged in the development of the OAU, and why you had the Casablanca versus the Moravia group, the one that wanted socialism, the other one that didn't. So my note here is that there are two quick notes. One, and I brought this up, and it just is sort of a non sequitur, just as the sort of almost like for me at this point, just a thought exercise, because I don't know exactly where to go with it. But so I'll share it with you all. You all, I'm sure, can make good use of it. That this is being written, Nkrumah's writing this 3 or 4 years after the assassination of Malcolm X, whose assassination was precipitated and encouraged because of his own development of the Organization of Afro-American Unity, based on his, at the time, what he saw Nkrumah was trying to do with the Organization of African Unity. Malcolm is assassinated, and a few years later, Nkrumah is already talking about how the process to build the OAU was flawed, had baked in failures. So I don't know exactly what to say about that, but it seems to speak to something that Malcolm would have had to grapple with going forward. Obviously, as he watched, if he would have seen the dissolution of at least the idea of the OAU, the fantasy of the OAU. But I think it also says something about what he suffered even before his own assassination, and what certainly happened here subsequent to his assassination, that the already baked in imperial divisions have just been peaked and exacerbated, and have at this point been largely successful in redirecting energies and movements and into more conservative directions. Or as Nkrumah talks about here, developing flexible formula. So so then the note I made here as it regards the buying power argument is that the way I'm trying to describe the myth and propaganda of Black buying power is what Nkrumah is, I think, in a grander scale, obviously addressing here, that essentially his wing of the independence movement, the African independence movement, was in immediate struggle and conflict with a Black capitalist argument. That others were saying we need a quote unquote formula flexible enough to enable each state to safeguard its national sovereignty and personal identity, which Nkrumah quite accurately was what was the made room for people to, by maintaining national sovereignty, align themselves with imperial powers and slow the process of actual independence or sovereignty. A close analysis of the specific conditions under which each one of the 13 states became independent reveals that neocolonialism was incipient during the movement for independence and emerged fully once independence was acquired. Few were deceived by such a deliberate and obvious stratagem. Imperialism was merely using the device of sham independence to prepare the African terrain to suit its own convenience and to avoid a direct and costly confrontation with liberation movements. So, again, my argument about buying power is that it has been used, or I should say, it has been grafted on, and this is what I actually argue in the book. It has been grafted on to a pre-existing media environment which set the terrain to allow for, or which was a terrain preparing African people and their genuine desire for liberation to be avoided. In other words, if you can, if again, as Nixon argued explicitly, as the corporate world argued explicitly, if you can get Black power to be redefined as Black capitalism, and Black politicians working within the Democratic Republican establishment, it's a win. All and it suits its own convenience. It suits the convenience of imperialism to avoid a direct and costly conflict or confrontation with with liberation movements. You don't have to have a struggle with a striking labor movement, with armed self-defense units in the Panthers or the BLA. You don't have to have, you don't have to deal with the Malcolms and the Assadas and you don't have to deal with that, but because you can tell Black people, start a business, invest in a bank, recirculate your money. So as Nkrumah continues, the emergence of conflicting trends was not fortuitous, but a logical consequence of the state of tension between qualitatively different situations: genuine independence and sham independence. So in our context, you have the Black liberation movement, Or you have Black Lives Matter. That would be one way. But you have the Black Liberation Movement, or you have Black capitalism. You have efforts at degrees, at least, of nationalist sovereignty within the Black American struggle here in the United States, and you have Johnson, Robert Johnson, John H. Johnson, rather, selling the Negro, literally, how to, making documentaries selling the Negro. And the myth of buying power seeks to deny or hide this micro divide. I didn't intend for that to rhyme, but I'll take that. Bars. It's like, but that's it. It's intended to hide the divide, to make it seem like there is no divide. There's no class division. There is no uh, business class, Black bourgeoisie. There is no. We're all together. Internally, Nkrumah writes, the capitalist imperialist states face serious economic and social difficulties. Rising prices, balance of payments, problems, widespread and repeated strikes are only a few of the symptoms of the general malaise. In the United States, the grave domestic situation is aggravated by the massive counterattacks of the African American revolutionaries. So Nkrumah is even writing about this at the time. Again, not specifically to the points I'm raising, but he's, in general, that's what he's saying. Internally, the mother country here in the United States was struggling, is struggling. That was the discussion we were having earlier with Fabio and Piers. So how does it address its internal conflict? Hostility, unemployment, COVID, police violence, mass incarceration, poverty. How does it deal with that? It's not, instead of redistributing, safety netting, adjusting its abusive public policy. No, we get myths of buying power that are meant to be a response. How did he put it just a second ago? That are meant to be what hides those divides of these conflicting trends between genuine and sham independence. There is a genuine liberation effort and movement, and then there is the one that we get rebranded and handed to us, and to close the gap, to reconcile the gap between the profession, the professed propagated message, and the reality. We get a myth of buying power. Again, the inequality you suffer is not the state. It's not capital. It's not anti-blackness. It's financial literacy. You need a business mentality, as Boyce Watkins says. It's just being better with your money. Again, Chomsky, propaganda is to democracy what violence is to totalitarianism. The more you tell people they are free, the more they must be propagandized. Nkrumah continues, without political unity, African states can never commit themselves to full economic integration, which is the only productive form of integration able to develop our great resources fully for the well-being of the African people as a whole. Again, at a microcosmic level, this is my buying power argument. Without political unity, there can be no economic integration. There can be no economic freedom without political power. You cannot avoid the question of political power in having a conversation about material inequality. It cannot be we get our money right, we can get our politics right. That's factually, historically, economically, politically backwards. So that's why he talks about a political union that is in charge of economic development and, of course, the redistribution of the wealth that creates. The struggle for continental union and socialism may be hampered by the enemy within, those who declare their support for the revolution and at the same time, by devious means, serve and promote the interests of imperialists and neocolonialists. That's exactly what the myth of buying power cultivates. Strong language, but that's what it cultivates. It cultivates the enemy within. It encourages from within the colonized community an idea that it is, again, their own economic fallibility that is the problem here. And that's it. That's where I'll stop. That's where we've stopped so far. That's where I'll stop for now. But I just can't help but find these and enjoy these parallels. Um, and Nkrumah was right so many years ahead of his time. So, all right. I will do a quick check in a minute of the chat, dangerously weighed out there, just to see if there are any questions or comments that I could get to and respond to quickly. But I just wanted to come back to this again and encourage folks while we're all here to support Katia Stitt, who is the program director at WPFW in Washington, D.C. And if you don't know who she is, that's sort of the point, that she is one of the many nameless, voiceless, faceless, often women who are working behind the scenes, who get no credit, don't want any credit, but who often, as a result, don't get the support that they deserve. So she has still not reached her goal for support with her medical bills. But again, someone who has given her life to the people and to the struggle is not automatically guaranteed access to the resources of the society that many of us do enjoy, particularly in times of need. So when this comes up, I when things like this happen, and somebody certainly this important to me personally, I want to continue to encourage that she be supported, because she has and would do the same. So I'm again putting the link in the chat and hoping that folks will go ahead and jump in there and support Katia. And again, if you don't know her, do it as if you're doing it for the many who you don't know who deserve some help. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And I believe that's it. So let me just quickly see if hey, no, it's my pleasure. Yes, definitely. And definitely, yes, please hit the like buttons, share, join, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, no, this is a good question. Claude Anderson is, I've read his work, listened to many of his lectures, and again, it's not that I'm arguing, we may not agree on everything, but it's not that I'm arguing that he and others are wrong on everything, but he is certainly wrong on issue of buying power. He's wrong on, I think, the way he outlines the potential within this economy for Black people to do anything. And again, I think it's really weird that, I don't know, it has to be 10, 15, 10 plus years ago, when I was still with WPFW. I tried to get Dr. Anderson on my radio show, and when I reached out to him, his office assistant or his colleague or whoever told me he's not doing interviews anymore, because we have already gone beyond the point where his argument would be of value. In other words, she was saying what he wrote in Powernomics and his other work, that what he was suggesting we do was already too late. So he was going to move on and focus on other things and be of help elsewhere. So to see that he sort of made a comeback is making these same mistaken arguments, certainly around buying power in business, and is unfortunate. But yeah. So that's in short what I think. And but again, as I tried to point out at another presentation, and I don't think my question got to her, but when Dr. Gordon Nemhard, points out, when she references Du Bois in her work on collectives and co-ops and talks about Du Bois' support of collectives and co-ops in his life, it was also at a time when he was misreading and misunderstanding himself buying power, and misquoting and misreferencing what it meant and what it could potentially do. And of course, he abandoned all of that when he, adopted socialism full on and left the country, or was forced out of the country. So it's Malcolm at one point, Amos Wilson at one point, Minister Farrakhan today, others who maybe entirely or partially or whatever correct in other areas of their analysis, many have mistaken this piece, misread this piece, and continue to this day to misread this piece, the issue of buying power. So which then I think allows for many different things to go on, and other misunderstandings to take place. So it's not even anything personal. It's just, but the messaging, the propaganda, the bad reporting, all that go into the production and the propulsion of this is something I try to be mindful of and aware of. So even as I'm critical of some folks, others do get to me a little bit more than others, but anyway. So all right, everybody, I appreciate you again coming through this morning, or if you see this later on and coming through, then again, please do hit like, share, subscribe, join the channel if you can, hit that bell too, and make sure you get all your notifications. Definitely come back tomorrow for the Remix Morning Show, and so much more coming through on the channel. There's stuff popping up all the time, can't even keep up myself, so please make sure you're getting all those notifications and supporting all that. And even where we disagree, I honestly, whatever. I mean, it's let there be disagreement. Let us be in dialogue with each other. And to that point, if you got more to say now or later,
put it in the comments.
And we'll catch you next time here at I Mix What I Like and Black Power Media. Thanks, everybody. Peace. Like Fred Hampton used to say, because I know you're willing to fight for it. Catch you next time.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. What I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.